This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to Late Boomers. Today our guest is author and award-winning publisher C.K. Collins. She was the owner of a hyper-local news publishing company in Nashville, Tennessee, and sold her business and retired in 2021.
And after experiencing significant loss, Kelly embarked on a 2-year travel sabbatical to find her new life, new joy and new love, and then wrote the book, The Swipe Right Effect, The Power to Get Unstuck, which is a nonfiction memoir that highlights great advice from friends at home and people she met on her travels. We're looking forward to hearing about her journey. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Really glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
Please tell us about your background and what happened in your life to change it and how that led you to the path you're on today.
Well, my background is in marketing and sales. I got married at a very young age, 21 years old, and had 3 incredible daughters by the time I was 29.
Wow.
And I went from cell phone sales to to working in healthcare marketing. Eventually, working my way up to run an occupational health center at a hospital, and then we moved 8 times in 11 years. And so, after that particular move, I think that was like move 6. We decided it was okay for me to stay home with the kids for a little while because we had been moving quite a bit. And so I started freelance writing, and that was really fun. I did all kinds of crazy, like ghost writing. I did help to do proposals and grants, and then in 2009, I started a news publishing business with a partner, Susan, and we grew that for 5 years together. And then she exited the business, and I kept growing it and sold it in 2018.
Mhm.
And I worked there for 3 years. That was part of my deal. And then I retired in 2021.
Mhm.
But stepping back a little bit, 2017, my husband and I split after a 31-year marriage.
Oof.
And it was just like starting over. And and it was, we were empty nesters. So it was easier on the kids, than I know some families with the young kids, it can be a lot harder, and it was hard on all of us. But so there was some freedom there to try to build my new life. And I started traveling solo, and that was a big game changer for me. And the first solo travel was the Camino de Santiago. It's a very spiritual hike in Spain,
Yeah.
and that really jump started my new life. And then after the 3 years, I retired and traveled and wrote a book.
Oh, well, on that note, I'd love to hear more about your book, which is called The Swipe Right Effect, The Power to Get Unstuck. Can you explain the title and tell us about the book?
Sure, sure. The title is, I'm in dating apps. A lot of us single people, are back out in the dating world after I hadn't had a date since I was like 20, or 19, 20 years old. So it was quite the journey to figure out how to do that again.
A bit
And
shocking.
it was quite shocking. But fun too, really fun. But in the dating apps, when you're looking at your phone, you see the picture of the person that you're considering, and you swipe right if you choose them, and you swipe left if you don't choose them. And so the name is kind of a play on words, because what I'm suggesting that people do is swipe right for themselves. And if you choose yourself and you choose to work on yourself, then the effects of that is a much happier life going forward. And I think whether you get stuck because of divorce or a job change or a job loss, a change in your financial situation, an illness, a death in the family, a lot of people get stuck for different reasons. And I am talking to 10 other women in the book, and they all had different experiences of being stuck. And so each chapter is a little bit of my story and the piece of advice that was given to me. And then I interview my friend who gave me the advice.
Mhm.
And then they were all wonderful and told their stories of how they learned the advice as well. So anything from, understanding that you are enough and maybe having a self-love mantra to building a vision board to,
Mhm.
how to forgive someone. I mean, we have some really serious talks in there and some of them have some humor as well. And then at the end, we come back around to dating. So after you've, kind of heard all of the advice, then we kind of get back to
Oh, interesting.
not really so much my advice on dating, but what I learned about dating, because I think everybody's different. And so to give advice is kind of presumptuous.
Well, I was gonna
But
ask you
when it,
a little bit about some details. Like, what kinds of
yeah.
advice did your friends give you, and the people that you met on your travels gave you advice too?
Oh, yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
share
Three
some
of the women in the
stories?
book. Sure. Yeah. Three of the women are from the Caminos that I hike.
Ah,
So one woman is from South Africa. Another one that was from Sweden, and another was from Canada. And so these, it's really interesting the different perspectives and the different backgrounds that all of these women had. One of them is Allison in the book. Everybody has a pseudo name.
uh-huh.
I didn't use their real name so that they could talk freely. And Allison gives the piece of advice to, could you think of this a little bit differently? This is going to look different a year from now. And then she just looks at me and says, this is going to look different a month from now, a week from now, a day from now. Don't look at the situation that you're in right now. This is temporary. Every situation you will ever be in your life is temporary. And
Mm.
you have to take a step back and reframe it so that you can take a step forward, or take 100 steps forward. And so I think that was really beautiful advice to just, understand that where you are right now, even though you are stuck, is not where you're going to be in the future.
I think that's
But you do have
really
to make that choice.
I think that's really good because looking back on some things in my life, I just sort of thought that was kind of permanent. And guess what? It isn't.
It isn't.
Right.
Everything changes.
Right. Exactly.
So
And
true.
yeah, and I'll say another one that I just love this story. I went and told my sister-in-law about what was happening, that we were splitting. And she came to my office later that day, and she brought me a bracelet, and it said, "You are enough." And she
Oh,
sat down and told me a story about her friend who had split with her husband. There had been an infidelity in their marriage, and they had tried to get back together, and it kept happening over and over again. And finally the woman just said to herself, I am enough. I should be enough. I shouldn't have to put up with this. And
Hmm.
Melissa told me that story, and then I interviewed that woman. She's in chapter 2, and chapter 2 is called You Are Enough. And I think but that little simple gift of that bracelet, and me looking down at my wrist multiple times a day, you are enough. She thought I was enough. That was enough for me in that moment. And I think the whole point of all of this is when you accept your friend's perspective as well as their advice, because they can see you in a different light than you can see yourself, because
Hmm.
you're in pain and you're hurting and you're stuck, and all you can see is that. And so I think that's why I feel like my friends just saved me, and my family too. But these, in particular, these friends, just the poignant advice they gave me at that particular moment they said it to me, it really was a game changer.
So kind.
and it helped you reframe your point of view.
For sure. Yeah. And then, chapter 1 is about vision, being able to have a vision for yourself. And I met her on the trail, in Spain, and her name is Brandy in the book. And she just said, have you ever done a vision board? And I was like, no, I've heard of those. And, I still talk to people about it and they still roll their eyes at me. But I was like, well, I'm kind of only have a backpack. I didn't bring a cork board with me and I don't have a poster board. Like, how am I going to do a vision board on the trail? And she said, open your phone and open your notes app. And she said, just start making a list of words, things that are important to you, things that you like to do, things you want to do with your children. And so I was like, oh, okay, words, I can do words. I'm a writer. I can do that. And that was just the beginning of a really wonderful exercise that lasted the 7 weeks of hiking on the Camino, because I was started talking to people about it. Like, this is actually fun. This is good. Do you have a vision board? And people would give me ideas for different things. But that woman from Sweden really helped me. That was the second day of 38 days. And it gave me it opened my mind to having a vision for myself, which I had 6 uninterrupted weeks to think about. And so it was like the perfect timing, the perfect, saying. And yeah, so she ended up being chapter 1.
Wow.
That's great advice for everybody. Thank you. Tell us more about your travels. You went to the Camino, but where else did you go? And also, if you would add what it was like to do solo travel. A lot of people are afraid to do that. And how do you feel it empowered you?
Wow. Great questions. Well, the Camino was, the first time, and that was 7 weeks. So I really got into good habits, and I learned a lot about doing it, by myself, but I was also surrounded by other pilgrims. That's what they call the hiking, the
Mhm.
hikers on
Yeah.
the trail. And so when I went out on my own in 2021, it was, it had been 4 years since I had done the Camino. And I was planning on doing my second Camino in the middle of that year. And, and some of the time I wasn't alone. I did do a sailing rally from Los Angeles to La Paz, Mexico with a crew of 5. I was
Wow,
the only girl on a crew of 5,
that's a
woman,
huge
sorry.
endeavor, as is the
It
Camino. The
was super
Caminos, did you
exciting.
do the whole Camino? Isn't it like 500 miles long
It's
or?
500 miles, right? Yes. Yeah, it's an incredible experience. I wish everybody could do it. And there are shorter ones. There's the second one I did a year ago. Right now, I was there, and that was only 180 miles, so it was a little bit different. I could do it in 2 weeks. So I did that. I went to Buenos Aires by myself, not speaking Spanish, and decided I was going to take tango lessons. And so that I took tango lessons and Spanish lessons while I was there. But I met people from all over the world there too, because there's just this whole community of people that want to learn tango. And so it was really quite amazing. I never got any good, but I had a blast.
Oh, wow.
It's hard.
And
It's harder than people think it is.
oh, it is so
Oh,
incredibly hard. And, to try to get up there after you've only been doing it for a week or 2 weeks is incredibly intimidating, because everybody else in the room has been doing it their whole lives.
Yeah.
So it was a really courage builder for me. I was very proud of myself that I put myself out there. Sometimes I was just sitting there going, "What do you think you're doing?" but it turned out great. And where else did I go? I went hiking by myself in Patagonia. I went to 4 different places in Patagonia, and I saw just incredible lakes, and the southernmost point of South America. It's just incredibly beautiful. I saw penguins.
mhm.
And then I
Yep.
did Portugal and Spain and Italy. Yeah. And so that was
Yeah.
fun. And Italy, I did with a girlfriend. She had just retired, and she was like, I need you to show me how to travel. so,
And
so
you
now she
did.
can go do it. Yeah. So she can go by herself now, or I go
Well,
with her anytime. But
Sounds
Well,
great.
do you think it healed you and helped you find a new you that you hadn't met before?
absolutely. And that's why I try to encourage people to go. My second book is going to be called The Traveling Effect, and it's going to be about solo travel. There's a lot of people who have been married for a long time. I mean, I had been married for 31 years. When I traveled with my family or my husband. I didn't ever travel by myself. And I started doing some travel for work where I would go to conferences by myself, but then I'm still around colleagues. It's not exactly by myself trying to find a restaurant by myself or any of that kind of stuff. But
Right.
what I found, and I think this is why part of it is healing, is when you travel alone, I think especially as a woman, people reach out to you. There is just this tenderness or something inside, especially if they know you're speaking English, you're in Italy or you're in Spain or Portugal. They reach out to you and they want to make sure you're okay. Are you all right? Especially if they speak any kind of English, they want to check on me. And I ended up meeting people from all over the world because of that, just people's openness and willingness. I guess when a woman is by herself, she's just not as intimidating as maybe, a group of people traveling or a man traveling by himself. But I've talked to a lot of men that also have had that same experience with solo travel. So I think what it makes you is approachable. And I found and experienced that people wanted to interact with me, from young people to older people. And some people just really wanted to make sure I was okay. It was so
Oh,
really an old member, an older couple in Santiago. They watched me. They like toasted a glass of wine, and then the man had to come over and check on me. And the wife's just like, "It's okay, it's okay." And I was like, "No, I'm fine. I'm really okay sitting by myself. Thank you." They wanted me to
Right.
join them, but they were Austrian. I couldn't have understood a word they said anyway.
oh, yeah.
Uh,
Well, divorce or loss of a loved one is life-changing. So, how did you get stuck and what did you do to recover from that besides travel? Anything else?
well, I think that there are a lot of ways to get unstuck. I did do some therapy. I hiked, literally 1,000 miles because I hiked about 500 miles before I went on the Camino. And I just would walk. I would set up walks because I had to do long walks. So it was, I was doing 8 to 12 mile walks, just training for it.
Mhm.
And so I would have one friend come for the first 4 miles and another friend for the second 4 miles and a third friend. And I think just opening my heart up and opening my mind up to listening to them, and I called it walking therapy. And I am lucky. I had really great friends. And then I did do a lot of workshops. I wasn't a very good self help person before this. And really, one of the things that changed that for me was Audible, or being able to listen to an audiobook.
Hmm.
I realized I absorb things much better either through listening to it in my car or watching a video. There's certain authors that just really resonate with me, like Brene Brown. Any of her books, she's
Mm.
amazing. Catherine Woodward Thomas has an amazing workshop called Calling in the One. And so if you're single and you're trying to figure out, like, why am I having some bad cycles with dating? Why do I keep making the same mistakes? And she really walks you through all of those things that you might be doing to, cause damage to your own relationships. And so I had some real aha moments with that one. But I think I just have really gotten interested in um, consciousness and mindfulness. And I read a book called The Secret, by
Mm.
Rhonda Byrne, and that's all about the
Yeah.
law of attraction. And I have it's just opened my mind to how much more control I have over my life, my own happiness with my thoughts. And I can't control what's going on out in the world, but I can control what's going on here and in my heart. And so just kind of having that recognition that if I'm angry or I'm sitting here in pain, the only thing that's going to keep coming to me is more anger and more pain, because I'm attracting, that's what I'm attracting. And I have a really good friend, chapter 4 and 5, Loretta, who she introduced me to The Secret. And I ended up listening to it and I found the words that I needed to let things go, to forgive and move on. And it really was just this huge aha moment driving driving through Pennsylvania on my way up to Boston. And so I think if people want or will invest time in themselves, invest time in doing, I have empowerment practices in the book. And if whatever book you pick up, but take the advice and listen to the advice, see if it works for you. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, but it's just really important to dive into, swiping right for yourself. Choose yourself
Mhm.
and start taking steps forward. You have the power to choose. If you don't choose, you're going to stay right where you are.
Yeah, I keep that book by my side and I reread it quite often, The Secret.
Yeah.
And it really is what you think about all the time is what you attract. And so if
Yeah.
you're thinking about negative things, that's what's coming your way. And if you think positive thoughts, then those will come your way and
And
that will come into your life.
and Mary and
Um,
I have talked to each other about the fact that what we've been attracting to to these interviews for our podcast is people that speak about mindfulness and vision boards and
Mm.
creativity and self-care, and we're getting a lot of we said, is it too much? We're going, no, we're attracting this now. This is coming to us for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I love that. Yeah.
yeah,
It's really
it's so
important.
true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Um, that's wonderful advice that you gave to our audience and to us. Do you have more advice about examining your own state of stuckness, as you call it, and how to get past it?
Well, I think that a lot of people, when they're stuck, it can also be because they can't forgive. And
Ah,
I know that feeling. I know that feeling. It was really difficult for me to take that final step to forgive. And a very dear friend of mine, Kay, gave me a book called The Art of Forgiving, and it's by Lewis Smedes. And it provided a framework for me to lay out my steps of forgiveness. There's a three stages of forgiveness, and the first one is basically being able to see the person as a human. They're human. They made a mistake. We all make mistakes, and we're all human. How can you look at them and see their humanity? And I could look at, I had this, when I read that, I had this flash of my ex-husband and I at our daughter's engagement party. And he just had this look on his face like, oh, what have, you could tell he was just feeling that he was feeling his mistake. And that was really the first time I kind of had empathy for him. And so when I read that, I applied that moment of empathy and I was like, okay, stage one, and stage two and stage three. But I think that I think most people who've been wronged or been hurt get stuck at forgiveness. And so I'll say that was the hardest chapter for me to write. But it was the secret that gave me the original words and it was, I forgive you, I release you, I want you to be happy. And it was
mm,
that third part that was really hard for me. But, even though I was finding my way to happiness, it was just kind of, ugh. And that second stage, is basically giving up the right to vengeance. And when I
mm,
could say, "I release you and I want you to be happy," that it was like I just kinda lifted off the ground. It was just amazing, and stage 3 is reframe, just like Allison said back in chapter 4, reframe the situation. How
mm,
can you think of this differently? And it's just beautiful. I mean, it's his work, not mine, but I was able to apply that and I could see that I was ready. I had hit the stage where I could finally move on and be happy and say, I want you to be happy. And so I hope people will. I mean, whether it's my book or Lewis Smead's book or anybody's book, if you're feeling stuck, think about that. Am I harboring some kind of resentment or anger or pain? Because people would say, I think you may still be angry. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not angry. I'm just still hurting. And so, their interpretation of what they were seeing was different from how I was interpreting what I was feeling.
Mhm.
And because I wasn't feeling it all the time, it would just kind of sneak up on me. And so I think that's important to just take a look and see, am I in need of forgiving someone? And I end my chapter on forgiveness saying I had to forgive myself. I stayed in a
Mm.
place where I wasn't happy, and that was my biggest lesson from the Camino was, yes, I had to forgive my ex-husband, but I had to forgive myself for allowing myself to be unhappy for so long.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because there's another way to move on that as well. Because um, I think what I mean to say is that it also happens when a loved one dies and you're
Yeah,
angry with them for dying. And
right.
that's harder to you can forgive, but
Mhm.
you can't wish them happiness. It's it's uh
Right.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah, it's very difficult, and especially, when you lose a child, and I do have a chapter on grief, and I talked to 3 women. One lost her husband to cancer, one lost in a terrible motorcycle accident, and one lost her son to suicide at the age of 17. And so
mm,
they address it more beautifully than I ever could because they have lived it. And
yeah,
yes, I had grief from my divorce, but nothing like losing a child. That's
um,
a totally different thing. And they give great advice in that chapter. And I needed them for that because they were so brutally honest about how hard it is, but
that's so
but
super.
hopeful too.
So super. I can't wait to look at this book. And let's talk a
yeah.
little bit about dating now. What things do you recommend we do before we date? This will be good advice for us
Well,
because we've both lost our husbands.
oh, I'm so
And so
sorry.
I'm
Yes,
a ways from dating. I'm not ready
Yeah.
for that yet,
yeah,
but give us some
yeah.
advice. What do you recommend?
Well, I do think that you need to choose yourself first. I think you need to walk through, especially with grief, the different stages of grief. And if you read anything about it, it's not linear. You don't just go
Mhm.
stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. You go in and out of those 5, 6 stages, and it's very difficult. But I have 3 really good friends in Newport who are widows, and I think they stick together. And I think that's really helpful to have a sounding board of another widow or someone who has also experienced grief. And I've talked to them about that a lot. I think that's why, sometimes divorced women will, say, let's meet once a month for a glass of wine or once a week for a glass of wine, whatever. But you find that support because one friend, um, Annie, said to me, I didn't want to talk to anybody that hadn't lost their spouse. Like I didn't want to hear any advice from anybody. I only wanted somebody who understood exactly how I was feeling. And, and now she's 10 years out and she's in a totally different frame of mind. But I think surrounding yourself with people who understand is incredibly important, and allowing yourself that time. And I think that's why I say choose yourself, because um, it's not easy work. And when you do choose yourself before you start dating, then you, as Catherine Woodward Thomas says in her workshop, you become who you want to date, and you're going to put that out into the world. If you are, this is what I want: empathy, I want kindness, I want somebody who will love my children, I want somebody who wants to live by the ocean, and you end up saying, these are what I want. And at the end of that workshop, she says, now go be those things. And
Hmm.
so if you really take the time to work out what you want, I was really good at figuring out what I didn't want. I wasn't very
Yeah.
good at figuring out what I did. And so I think that was the really important step to get to. And that took the time. I had to choose myself. And yes, I retired and had a year to go travel. And I feel like I'm still kind of traveling because I'm from Nashville, but I live in Newport, Rhode Island by the ocean right now while I'm writing. And that's been, that was a big part of choosing myself was I need to go take this time and do this. And I have 2 kids who live in the Northeast, and so that was kind of the reason I chose to go that direction after I stopped traveling abroad. But it it means everything to me that I took that time, that I could give myself that time too, was really important. But even if you're working, 12-hour shifts as a nurse or a teacher, it's still important to take that time and find a way to do it. whatever that
I
looks like for you.
I have to ask you what dating apps you'd recommend to our audience.
I like Bumble the best. I've heard a lot of people find somebody on Match. Um, there was just one little thing I didn't like about Match, and that was just that other people who didn't fit my parameters of who I was looking for could still approach me.
Mm.
And that was just the one little thing I didn't like. And maybe I did something wrong, that it didn't work. I've had friends who like Hinge. I have not tried that one. And I have friends who've been on Tinder, but that they didn't have great experiences there. I think it was more of a hookup site.
Mhm, mhm.
So,
Ooh,
but I like Bumble because the woman has the power to make the choice, and they
ah,
can't reach out to you until you reach out to them. And that was just really comforting to me to know I could take my time, um and I like to go slow. I don't like to be talking to 8 different people at one time. I'd rather talk to one person, see how it's going, and then if that's not working, it was nice to meet you and move on.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm not into dating like 8 people at once. I get too much going on for that.
right,
yeah, yeah.
right.
Well, what 5 things did you quit doing to find your happiness?
Did I quit doing? Oh gosh. Well, I quit trying to be a hero. That was probably my biggest thing. Um,
How were you a
I'm
hero?
actually writing it. Well, I felt like I had to be everything to everybody, and I had to entertain all the time. I had to have the most beautiful yard. I had to be the best employer. I had to be the best mom. I had to be the room mom and the athletic mom and the soccer mom and the dance mom and the piano mom. And I just wanted to be everything to everybody. And I think in my mind, the
Yeah.
more busy I was, the more important I was. And it wasn't conscious by any means. But when I look back at my 30 and 40-year-old self, that was how I lived. No matter what I was doing, I was all in, and I didn't know how to slow down. A lot of it was I didn't want to let anybody else down. And so that was one of the biggest things I did was stop trying to be a hero. And I had somebody say that to me actually probably at like 35 years old, and I was just totally dismissed it. And now I'm like, wow, she was ahead of the game for me
Yeah.
figuring that out. Uh, um, and I quit trying to live a version of my old life. I
Mm.
And when I had the opportunity, I was coming up on the 3-year mark of having to stay in that job, and I had bought a house after my divorce, and I was still surrounded by all of the photo albums, the dishes, the cups, the same frames of the family pictures, and it was in the same couch and the same bedroom set. And, it was just like, I'm just living a different version of my old life. And so I jokingly say I quit my old life. But I did do this crazy thing. I sold my house and I gave away everything before I started the year of travel because I
That's a
knew
huge step.
it was a huge, and I don't recommend that for everybody, so please don't everybody go do that. But for me, I mean, I was so entrenched because I owned the local newspapers. I was so entrenched in these small towns that I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to the grocery store. I couldn't go anywhere without some kind of familiarity from the public. And so I quit my job. I retired. I quit my life. I sold everything and started a new one. But I also quit being hard on myself. I gave myself a break because I was like, "Why I should have been a better wife. I should have been a better mother. I should have been able to keep the company and get divorced. I should have been able to figure out how not to give away things. I Why can't I be stronger?" And when I started seeing myself through my friend's eyes, you are strong. You were smart to give away the business. You needed to start a new life. And then it was like, look how brave you're being. You're going out and traveling the world for a year. And I mean, most people, you work till you're 65 and yeah, I'm doing some very non-conventional things. But but I also did things to prepare my life for that, and my brother's my financial advisor, highly recommend him. But when I said, what if I do this crazy thing? What if I sell everything and I travel for 1 or 2 years? And he said, let's take a look. And we just put up like 5 different scenarios on the whiteboard, and we picked one. And I had 9 months lead up to, sell the house, moved into a small apartment for just like 6 months. And then I gave notice at my job and I started planning my travel. So, and it worked out. And I had the support of an amazing family. My family's been great. And letting me drop in for 1 or 2 weeks in their house in Nashville so I can see everybody. But yeah, it also does help to have a lot of support and friends and family.
Yeah, you seem to have a lot of support. What about numbers 4 and 5?
Oh, I think
Did I miss one?
she's done 8 or 9 things she quit.
I'm
Job,
sure.
life,
I
Kira,
was gonna
being
say
hard on
that's a
myself. I
lot.
think I only did 4. I think I only did 4. Yeah.
Oh,
I
what's
quit
another
eating
thing?
carbs. No,
Oh, really?
no,
No, you're just joking.
no. I love bread. No, not giving up carbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Kelly,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
advice would you give our audience as a takeaway from our conversation today?
I'm on a mission. I want everybody to understand that they have the power to make their lives better. And the power comes from a choice, the choice that they make to change their lives, the choice that they make to let the anger go, to forgive, or just to be able to look in the mirror and say, I love you. Look in the mirror every day and say, I love you. You are enough. I am enough. And there's some small things that you can do. And in the book, I start small and I kind of build all the way up to, the hard stuff of forgiveness. But it's all in your power to choose. And that's what I want people to understand. If you're stuck, you are the only one that can get you out. And that's done with one simple thing, a choice. And, good stuff is on the other side. You just have to make a choice.
Mm,
Love it.
such good advice. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Oh, thank
You're an
you.
inspiration to everyone who's experienced loss and want to create themselves. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Our
Thank you
guest
so much.
Our guest today on Late Boomers has been C.K. Collins, former award-winning publisher, world traveler, and author of The Swipe Right Effect: The Power to Get Unstuck. Her advice will empower you and change your life. Follow up with Kelly on her website, ckcollins.co, and she's giving away a white paper called 10 Ways to Get Unstuck, and it has tips on how to get back to a happy life. And check her out on her YouTube channel. Thanks again.
And we want to
Thank
remind our
you.
listeners that we now have our own YouTube channel, the Late Boomers Podcast. Please subscribe to that. And also, please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform so you don't miss any of our weekly episodes. And follow us on Instagram at Late Boomers and at I am Kathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins. We hope that our episode today inspired you to swipe right for yourself and get unstuck and find joy and love in your own life. And thank you again, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.